Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen. Welcome back to Sunday morning in the old cookbook show. Now, if you've been watching the last couple of weeks, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole looking at chocolate mayonnaise cakes. Most of my research for the chocolate mayonnaise cake happened in newspaper databases because prior to the end of World War II, I couldn't really find it in any of the other resources that I have, all of the cookbook collection. Doesn't show up in the community cookbooks prior to the end of World War II. So I researched a lot of cakes on old newspaper databases going back into the 1800s. And while I was researching that, one cake that came up over and over and over again was a cake called the Lightening Cake. And the first reference to this lightning cake that I found was in 1916. Called Blitzkuchen. I'll throw it up on the screen so that you can take a look at it. Blitzkuchen is German for lightning cake. And this lightning cake, I would see it over and over and over again down through time. And for the most part, it was always the same-ish recipe. A one-bowl cake. Lightning cake referenced the fact that it was an easy method. Easy ingredients, usually a lemon-flavored cake. You could mix it really quickly, you could bake it really quickly, and you could get it on the table quickly if, people showed up and you weren't expecting them and you needed a cake for coffee time. So in this bowl I have butter and sugar, and I'm creaming that together. Here I've got some flour, I'm adding baking powder and salt. The lightning cake that I'm making today, I only found 2 instances of it in the newspaper databases. This one that I'm doing today is from 1923, February 3rd, 1923, from a newspaper in Des Moines, Iowa. And then I see it again in 1934 in St. Cloud. This is an outlier. And when I gave those dates, I didn't do a deep dive on this one. I certainly didn't find every instance of this cake. There's probably more of them out there. If your family still makes this cake, let me know down below in the comments if you still make Blitzkuchen or lightning cake. And so we're making the batter, and we're going to put that in the baking pan. And then at the same time we're making a meringue. And that meringue gets baked on top of the cake batter at the same time. So effectively what you have is a cake and a frosting that bake at the same time. And the frosting is, of course, a meringue, but I think the meringue would be kind of cool on the top of the cake. So I've got 3 egg yolks in there, mixing together, creaming together with the butter and the sugar. I've got the dry ingredients ready to go. It gets lemon flavoring. Whites are in the copper bowl so that we can make the meringue. So I'm going to add the lemon flavoring. And then I'm going to scoop in a little bit of the flour. And a little bit of the milk. And then back with a little bit of flour. And on an upcoming edition of the Sunday Morning Old Cookbook Show, we will be doing the $100 cake and the mythology around the $100 cake and how that carried on to the Mrs. Fields cookie, the Neiman Marcus cookie, and it even spawned myths in other parts of the world. In South Africa, Woolworths, pretty much exactly the same story as the Neiman Marcus cookie. It's pretty funny. So we're going to do that. We're going to do that cake shortly as well. So, just about got the cake mixed together. Got the flour in. Put in the last of the milk. Okay, that cake batter is done. And so in the copper bowl here, we'll just whip up the egg whites. And this is just a really simple meringue. Egg whites and some sugar with some nut meats. And again, they, as is the norm in these older recipes, they just say nut meats, and you can use whatever nuts you want, whatever nuts you like. So I'm going to use pecans. Okay, and we'll just sprinkle in a little bit of sugar at a time. a lot of the lightning cake recipes, the farther back you go, and the farther back you go, in the place of regular granulated sugar, they use a superfine sugar, a fruit sugar, superfine grind sugar, or powdered sugar. And that really finely ground sugar means that the cake comes together faster. And I would usually use that if I'm making a meringue because it dissolves quicker. So next in the nut meats, like I said, I'm using pecans, and that just needs a really quick spin. That's it. I've got a 9x9. So we'll get the cake batter in. You don't want to take too long beating up your egg whites. You don't want the cake batter hanging around before you get it in the oven. Now we'll spread that out. The one recipe mentioned that it should be spread fairly thin. It is just a thin layer of cake in the bottom. So get that into all the corners. And then we'll get the meringue topping on there. Now, one of the things that I always find interesting when I look at, hundreds of variations or hundreds of the same recipe, and you look at the variations and you look at the way it evolves over time, you can kind of see how, the recipes will branch off into multiple different directions, still be called the same thing, but have different ideas attached to them. A lot of the Blitzkuchen, or, the German lightning cakes, you were whipping the eggs, making a meringue, and then folding them into the cake batter. Egg whites and sugar. Love egg whites and sugar. In order to make the cake light. And then you were putting cinnamon sugar on top and maybe some nuts in sort of, like a crumble topping. And I wonder if this cake, where the whites got separated out and layered on top in a meringue, if that is just a variation, someone along the line made a mistake and they really liked it. and they just sort of, went with it. And it turned into a different cake, yet with the same name. I mean, that is highly a possibility of how this could have evolved. So I'm sprinkling cinnamon sugar on top. The oven is preheated to 350 degrees, just as a medium oven. I didn't use all of the sugar and cinnamon that the recipe called for. I think that's enough for me. So into the oven we go. Okay, so let me tell you.
Okay.
Hey, Jules.
Glen's going to tell me.
Hey, Jules.
How are you, Glen? Hey,
good.
friends. What are you telling me?
While this cake was baking and when I pulled it out of the oven, I was so excited.
It looks like it had a big dome on it.
It did.
And it's kind of settled.
The meringue was really tall. It was
is that what's on the top?
So,
Okay.
in the newspaper article, the clock is ticking. In the newspaper article, the person who wrote this recipe said, serve and eat within 6 hours.
6 hours.
Time is running out.
Okay. The whole thing.
The whole thing. We have to...
I don't know that I could if I had to.
Get in there.
So there's meringue on the top.
It's meringue on top.
Interesting.
So it's called lightning cake.
Is it super fast to make? Like, what's with the... It's lemony. It's lovely and lemony and fluffy and...
Okay, so the cake itself is really light, airy, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Like it's...
I'm curious about the meringue.
You wouldn't know from the cake that there were no egg whites in the batter for the cake. Because usually in order to get a cake that light and airy...
It's all in the meringue?
You need to put the whites in. You need to whip the whites and put them in. All the whites are in the meringue.
What else is in the meringue, though?
Pecans.
Okay.
And then a little bit of cinnamon sugar sprinkled on top.
A little bit of cinnamon sugar.
Okay, so let me look at my notes. I found this cake recipe in a newspaper February 3rd, 1923 in Des Moines, Iowa. And then again in 1934 in St. Cloud.
Okay.
And then every reference, so this is called the lightning cake because it's fast to make. Every other reference that I found to a lightning cake since 1934 has been not this,
Okay.
but another cake that was really quick to mix up.
Okay.
But this idea of putting the meringue on top, I can't seem to find it. I'm hoping out there we can use everybody, you know, in the mass research to find other instances of this cake. Because I've never seen it before and I don't know why it died out.
No, it's pretty good.
You're missing out.
It's a good cake.
You're missing out. Why are we not making this? Why is this not in every cookbook?
Because you can't put everything in every.
I know. Okay, so make this cake. Make this cake and tell everybody about this cake. It is absolutely amazing. Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.